You ever have one of those mornings where you're scrolling through your bank app expecting the usual just paid rent dent and instead your jaw drops because the number has somehow cratered way past what you thought was possible? Yeah, that was me sitting on my couch in a tiny city apartment staring at an account balance that looked more like a cruel joke than actual money. And right at that moment, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake, my new roommate. Not a "hey man, wanna grab lunch?" or anything normal. Nope. It was just 3 words: "You're locked out." Locked out of my own place. Like, how does that even happen? I honestly thought locking someone out of an apartment you legally live in was one of those bad roommate horror stories that people tell for laughs, not a reality check you get at 9 a. Like, on a random Tuesday. But here I was, standing on the other side of my own front door, which, surprise, surprise, was now firmly shut, and Jake held the keys. I remember pacing back and forth on the sidewalk watching people stream by. Everyone else had somewhere to go, but me? I was trapped outside my home, trying to figure out how a guy I barely lived with for a month managed to take over the very space I was paying good money for. It wasn't like Jake had stormed in like some villain out of a movie. At first, he was exactly what I needed. A laid-back guy who didn't make renting a studio apartment in a brutal market seem like a nightmare. When I moved here, rent was eating up half my paycheck, so finding a roommate seemed like the sensible option to keep my head above water. Jake showed up with a grin, a casual vibe, and honestly, a weird charm. We hit it off talking about video games, music, and the usual city grind complaints. He seemed cool enough, but looking back, that was probably my first mistake, thinking casual meant harmless. Sarah, my longtime friend, had warned me. Over dinner one night, she simply said, "Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is." I nodded, laughing it off and telling her, "Come on, Sarah, it's just living with someone. What's the worst that could happen?" Well, that's what I thought back then before the little things started slipping away. At first, it was subtle. I'd noticed my favorite snacks disappearing faster than I remembered buying them. Then a couple of bucks gone from my wallet. Crazy, right? I could have sworn I was losing my mind. But it didn't stop there. Jake began bringing over people I didn't recognize at all, people who acted like they had keys and free reign around the place. I started wondering if I was living in a dorm instead of an adult apartment. The tension built quietly, simmering beneath the surface, until one day it boiled over with that locked-out text. That moment, standing there, door between me and my home, felt like the full stop on a sentence I didn't even know I was writing. I was pretty sure things couldn't get any worse, except, well, they did. And as I was trying to wrap my head around how Jake went from roommate to life invader, I knew I had a story that was far from over. Moving to the city had felt like stepping into a new world. Bright lights, endless possibilities, and, of course, rent prices that made my stomach twist like a roller coaster. The search for a place to live was a nightmare all on its own. But the moment I found that tiny apartment, well, I thought I'd hit a jackpot, even if the walls were paper thin and the space closer to cozy than spacious. Still, it was mine. Except, of course, mine meant my wallet was being squeezed dry. The rent was brutal, and utilities weren't playing nice either. That's when I landed on the idea of getting a roommate. Enter Jake. He seemed like the perfect solution, laid back, easygoing, and with a smile that made you think he didn't have a care in the world. When he first moved in, we snagged beers from the corner store, talked about where we wanted to be in 5 years, and shared playlists filled with tracks we both loved. I thought, this is good, this'll work. But, things started shifting just after a few weeks. Small things at first, weird little annoyances. Like, I'd clearly remember buying a giant bag of chips for movie night, and then, poof! Halfway through the week, it was mysteriously gone. Or my favorite coffee blend vanishing from the shelf. No big deal, right? Except it happened more than once. Then Sarah got involved. One evening, over takeout and bad TV, she gave me the look. You know the one? The expression that says she's noticed the storm brewing long before you did. "You sure that guy's legit?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I shrugged. "Jake? Yeah, man, he's fine. Might be a little inconsiderate sometimes, but who isn't?" She shook her head, but I could tell she wasn't buying it. "Trust your gut. If it feels off, it probably is." At the time, I thought she was just being protective. But as days turned to weeks, her warning echoed louder and louder in my head. Then came the money missing. I mean, at first it was only a few dollars here and there. I pinned it on me, misplacing stuff or, just having an off day. But when $20 from my hidden emergency cash stash vanished, alarm bells started ringing for real, and Jake's charm started slipping. He was less laid-back roommate and more someone who thinks your apartment is a communal playground. He started inviting over folks I didn't know. Strangers who acted like they belonged there, moving around like they had permanent resident status. One night, I walked in to find a small group watching TV with no one having invited me. It was like I was the outsider in my own home. I tried to keep things civil, thinking maybe I was just overreacting. But the air got thick with unspoken tension, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Then, of course, the locked-out incident. The moment when all the little worries, the creeping doubts, and my fading trust locked eyes and said, "Yeah, buddy, this just got real." I stood there on the sidewalk feeling like a character in some twisted sitcom I hadn't auditioned for. And Jake? He was inside, holding the keys, like he'd been in control from the start. The landlord, Mr. Thompson, was the last person I expected to hear from after that mess. When I called him, hoping for a quick fix, his reaction was, well, let's just say it was less than helpful. He gave me this half-hearted, "you two need to sort it out," and then dodged any real responsibility like it was a hot potato. That response? Infuriating. At that point, I wasn't just trying to protect my rent money or my snacks anymore. I was fighting to reclaim a space that was supposed to be my haven, not a battleground. Just when I thought I had Jake figured out, the erratic behavior, the disappearing money, the relentless invasion, the guy blindsided me, dropped a bombshell that flipped everything on its head. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I was ready for what came next. It started with the little things, almost like a bad magic trick. One day, I noticed my headphones weren't where I'd left them the night before. Not lost in that mysterious black hole only roommates seemed to discover, but just gone. I asked Jake casually, hoping for a laugh or some lame excuse. Instead, he just shrugged and said, "Dude, maybe you misplaced them." Yeah, right. Then the money started disappearing. At first, I chalked it up to forgetfulness, maybe me losing track somehow. But when my wallet went missing for a few hours and 50 was nowhere to be found, alarm bells actually started ringing. I mean, who steals from a roommate, right? Well, apparently Jake thought it was open season on my cash. But it wasn't all about stuff vanishing. Jake began changing right in front of me. That easygoing guy who used to share my taste in music? He suddenly grew twitchy, snapping at the tiniest things. Like when I asked if he could give me a heads up before having guests over, he actually rolled his eyes and shot back. "Chill, man. It's our place now. Our place." Those words hit me like a punch. Was this still my apartment? I started noticing how he'd move around like he owned every inch, lounging on my couch like it was his throne and treating my kitchen like a snack bar for his guests. Speaking of guests, that was when things got weird in a new way. Jake started bringing over these characters I'd never seen before. At first, it was just one or two, some lost souls from the neighborhood maybe, but pretty soon, it looked more like a revolving door of strangers. One night, I came home after a late shift and found not one, not two, but 6 people gathered in the living room blasting music and playing some raucous card game. None of them looked like they were planning to leave anytime soon. I remember standing in the doorway, feeling like a ghost in my own place. Jake glanced at me and just said, "Relax, I got it covered." Got it covered? Dude, no, you got it covered like a kid hogging the TV remote. This was a stick in the eye for everything I thought I signed up for. The tension between us started to bubble, like steam pushing its way through a cracked pot. One evening, I tried to talk to him about the rent, the guests, the missing stuff, everything, but Jake just waved me off. "Look, man, if you're gonna be like this, maybe living together isn't the move." There it was, the thinly veiled threat that made my blood boil. Was I really supposed to just sit back and watch my life crumble like this? Then came what I can only describe as the final straw, the lockout. That morning felt like getting sucker punched by fate. I'd gone out for coffee, thinking I could shake off the growing stress. When I came back, there was a text waiting, "You're locked out." At first, I figured it was some cruel joke, or maybe Jake had accidentally taken my keys. Nope. I was standing on the other side of my front door, watching Jake inside smirking as he held the keys like they were some kind of power symbol. I banged on the door, called him, texted again, but Jake just ignored me. I thought about calling Mr. Thompson, the landlord, hoping he'd intervene. But you know how that went. Mr. Thompson sounded annoyed and basically told me to sort it out myself. Trapped outside, I felt a bizarre mix of anger and disbelief. How does someone ramp up from being the friendly face you trust to someone who literally shuts you out? It was nuts. But then, just as I was catching my breath, trying to figure out what I should do next, Jake finally responded with a message that threw everything upside down. "There's something you need to know. Meet me in the cafe down the street, now." I stood on that sidewalk, keys taunting me from beyond the door, heart pounding. Whatever Jake was about to say, I had no clue it'd change everything I thought I knew about him and about the whole nightmare that had taken over my life. So, I pocketed my phone and headed for that cafe, wondering just how deep this rabbit hole was going to go. I sat across from Jake in the dingy cafe just a block from the apartment, sort of like a ground zero for what felt like the mess of the last month. His hands were wrapped tightly around the lukewarm coffee, and I could see kind of a flicker in his eyes I didn't expect. Not arrogance or mischief, but something, almost tired. "So," he started slowly, like choosing his words was a full-time job, "I guess this is a good time to come clean." I nearly snorted. After everything? But I held back, waiting to hear whatever ridiculous excuse he'd throw my way. The reason I've been acting like this, the reason I took those liberties, it's complicated. He took a deep breath. I was trying to hide something, or maybe protect someone. It's a long story, okay? I raised an eyebrow. Enlighten me. Jake looked around, then leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. I'm not actually who I said I was. The truth is, I'm on the run from some bad stuff. Got tangled with the wrong crowd back home, and I needed to lay low. Thought living with you, quiet, under the radar, would work. But then things spiraled. Silence hung heavy between us. It was a wild confession, but suddenly things clicked. The random people he brought over, they weren't random. They were friends from his old neighborhood, people helping him stay one step ahead. The way he took control of the place, the petty theft, it stemmed from desperation, survival, maybe even guilt. I leaned back, surprised at myself for feeling something close to sympathy. Despite every frustration, every stolen dollar, every locked door, this guy was just a scared person trying to survive in his own messy way. But locking me out? I asked, frowning. Jake's eyes dropped. That was stupid. I panicked. I thought if I kept the keys, I could stop everything from falling apart, stop my past from catching up right here. That night at the cafe was a turning point. Instead of anger, a strange kind of understanding settled in. I told Sarah everything the next day, expecting her to mock me mercilessly or say, "Told you so." But instead, she surprised me. "You did good," she said, nodding like I'd climbed some impossible mountain. Most people would have just run away. So with Sarah's help, and after a few tense calls to Mr. Thompson, who finally agreed to change the lock so Jake couldn't pull any more stunts, I managed to take my apartment back. It wasn't just about the keys or the money anymore, it was about reclaiming my sanctuary. Jake found somewhere else to stay, got in touch with some help, and even started sorting out his mess. We didn't end on perfect terms, no fairy tale ending here. But it was enough for me, enough to start fresh without someone else controlling my space or my sanity. Looking back, I don't know if I really won this whole roommate ordeal. It was messy, exhausting, and at times heartbreaking. But I took a few lessons away. No one really prepares you for, always trust your gut. Boundaries aren't optional, and sometimes people are fighting battles you can barely see. So I guess what I'm wondering now is, have you ever had a roommate story that completely blew your mind? Something that wasn't just about missing stuff or weird habits, but about real, complicated people and the chaos that comes with them? Because if you have, then you know, it's never just about the rent. It's about surviving the unexpected roommate's life throws at you, and somehow coming out the other side still standing.